Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people and the planet. For our special edition in May, we're focusing on technology and the marginalized. In a world where bias is everywhere, it often seems impossible to achieve true neutrality. In many countries, technology is often looked as the equalizer, but within the process of trying to obtain, maintain, and grow the usage of technologies, barriers are often faced by marginalized groups and communities around the world, leading to further inequalities. Globally, the leaders of technologies are Japan, South Korea, China, and the United States, leaving most of the world out of the loop in terms of the development and non-permission-based access. This lack of access continues to widen the economic and social gaps between the nations that struggle to obtain permission to deploy new technologies to their populations. If true change economically and socially is wanted globally, having access and knowing how to use technology is key. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing William A. Adams, Microsoft's first CTO technical advisor and founder of Wave Studio, LLC, a tech company finding tech talent and providing them with seed financing to develop new companies and technologies. In addition, Wave Studio's ultimate plan is to create and grow companies owned by minorities, people of color, and women around the world. William Adams' career has led him not only to innovate successfully, but to develop a heart to give back to communities that may not have access to these key technologies. Today, we're going to look at the critical role technology plays in equalizing countries and communities around the world. Let's get into the interview. William Adams is a software engineer, trailblazer, award-winning DEI innovator, philanthropist, known for his work at Microsoft and rolling out critical XML code globally. In many of Microsoft's core products, he was also named the first technical advisor to Microsoft CTO Kevin Scott. While leading and mentoring young developers, William is often the only Black man in the room. This experience has motivated William to work towards changing it. Acting as an entrepreneur, William has founded and overseen global initiatives that revolutionize how underserved communities access jobs and launch careers at Microsoft. He spent 3 years building the Engineering Excellence Program in India, designed to empower local engineers to succeed on a world stage. William not only has an innovative mind, but a revolutionary heart, eyed on positive and inclusive change. Welcome, William.
Well, thank you for having me. As you were reading that intro, I was thinking, what a great mission you have.
Thank you. Yes. I think, we sometimes forget on the planet the value of who we are as human beings. And, the time that we're in, I believe that we can't even deny that that's what's up for quote unquote sale right now. Like, do we value who we are as, I would say, spiritual or creatures of this planet? That's really what's up, that we have to examine right now in the times that we face. And so, in looking at that, technology, of course, is the perfect thing to discuss because, as you see, everybody is nervous. They hear, AI and they want to, run and hide, or they're scared. We have those tech movies that, we used to be like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? And now things are actually happening. And now people are like, maybe it's not so cool.
Yeah.
And so, just like those movies, obviously, tragedies and horrific things happen to the humans on the planet. But in that, I always believe movies and in real life, since we are the inventors of this technology, that we can control how far that kind of stuff goes, and also, how much it changes our world, and also, how it can benefit the world. And so I'm so excited to talk to you today about technology and where it's going, and how does it affect communities, not just here in the U.S., but globally, that don't have access to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation. And it strikes me that one of the first things we might want to talk about is, what is technology?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So yeah, I guess that's let's dive into like what is technology, because I think it's something that's continuously changing. So how would you define technology?
Yeah, today it's in the past. I'll start from the past. So in the past, and let's go back to the 1950s or 40s, around the time that what we know as computers were being created. And back then, it was like the computer was technology. But even before that, the bow and arrow was technology. The gun was technology. So it's anything that kind of takes a leap, moves humanity forward by some step amount and is different from where we were. So the computers have done that for the last 4 or 5 decades, 50, 60 years. And for the longest time, technology in that way was defined by big companies like IBM, and later Microsoft, and now Google and Facebook, all these what we would clearly call tech firms. And the technology is the software that they create that make our lives better or worse. They enable us to do various things. And they oftentimes enable certain classes of people to make a lot of money and to control other classes of people. Because technology is that advantageous thing that one set of people has that another set doesn't.
Yes, it's. I would say it's what I would call the new gold, because if if we look back in history, right, when people were coming to the Americas, and they saw the Indians, and they had these gold jewelry and gold. And so, they came here to, quote unquote, strike it rich. And so now technology, I would say, is the new gold, right? The things that we want access to. And so in that, obviously here in the U.S., we have, specifically, I would say in California, the Silicon Valley, everybody knows about and Seattle too, Microsoft and Google, and definitely, of course, Apple. We all have our Apple phones and Apple watches, and it goes on and on. And so, it looks, obviously great from the outside if you don't have access to these, tools and things like that, or at least the latest and greatest. And I think I even read a statistic, statistically, there's more cell phones on the planet than there are people.
Yeah, probably.
And so, we have I would say an addiction problem at this point, and we're starting to see all these, different things that are coming from it. But then even with all the, the issues that we are finding from a social aspect, we still are craving it because of the, ease, and then also for places that are like third world countries, the access to, improve yourself economically, right? Because now you can be at your computer and you can work from anywhere in the world, right? Which then opens up your ability to bring in income, right? So you could be, over in South Africa, but now you're working for a company in Europe, right? And so then you're now able to make the money that you aren't able to make there in your community because, maybe there's not those types of jobs available, or, or you just, for some reason aren't making the cut to get hired there. And so, so there, everybody wants that, right? Why wouldn't you? I myself work remote and can work anywhere in the world. So who wouldn't want this? And so how do we, start giving people, or I guess I have two questions. How do we make this accessible to people, and then should we? Right? Because we're seeing different. There's two sides to this issue.
Yeah. Well, should we? Definitely we should. I mean, the equivalent is saying something like, should we make clean water available to everybody? Because it takes technology to create clean water. You have to have filters and stuff like that. So the clear answer is, yeah, of course. It's obvious. Everyone should have clean water. Should everyone have the means of creating clear water on their own? And that's the tricky part with technology. There's a certain thing that everybody should get. Everyone's going to get a consumer device, right? Apple sells you a phone. Nokia sells you a phone. Whoever sells you a phone. And they, like you said, they kind of get you hooked. So everyone's going to get a phone, and they're essentially free. So everyone gets a phone. Should everyone own the patents for creating phones? Because that's having an equity share in the creation of and control of that technology is the really important part, right? You mentioned addiction, for example. It's that's certain kinds of software, social media in particular, causes that problem. So should everyone have access to social media? We should have access to be able to communicate. There's probably some concerns we have about regulating what happens on those platforms, particularly by nation states, actors. So we should be able to allow more people to have influence on what is created on those platforms. As it is, we, the average consumers, have no real control of what happens at Facebook and who they give data to and what's on the platform and what's not. They're private platforms run by billionaires. So we have no influence there, really, other than as end users. And that's probably something that's concerning, and we should say, we should provide more accountability at the very least, if not actual control of such things to more people.
Yes. It's obviously disconcerting, and I think I guess I would say I even have mixed feelings, because I saw when Zuckerberg had to go and was standing there to get for apologies, and I was like, I don't know, should one person have to apologize for the usage of others and things like that? It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And so, speaking, I guess, on along those lines, in introducing these technologies to populations that have not had traditional access, like for instance, I'll just take also because I know you work in the area, and also because I am originally from the Caribbean. That, in, we'll just say, these countries like, Jamaica, the Bahamas, we'll just say the Caribbean, right? Giving these people access now, they're just miles away from the U.S., right? Which has, easy access. How do we start introducing these without, I guess you would say, opening a Pandora's box, right? Because I believe, I guess maybe I should dive in, maybe I should pull the question back a little bit, because I believe there's two sides of why, access hasn't been, deployed so easily worldwide. Obviously one is about control, but then there's also, I guess, the dangers of just unleashing everything without educating people. So, I guess, what's your take on that?
There's two levels of access that you're talking about. One is just pure, like, can I get on the internet, for example? At this point, you'd be hard pressed, I think, to find a population and say, you should not have access to the internet, right? It's kind of like telling people you should not be able to make phone calls, right? It's like the internet is just the new communications channel of our age, and it replaces the traditional phone system. So I think for that part, the question's easy. It's like, well, everyone should have access to the internet. It's just like being able to make a phone call, except it's a lot cheaper. The second level is the applications you run on those devices that give you access to the internet. And this is what you're talking about, again, about like social media and things like that. But it does take education. I find myself telling my children, who are 10 and 8, about safety on the internet, at this age. They're only 10 years old and 8 years old. And we talk about the dangers of fake information, and you can't believe everything you see on the internet, and how to calmly analyze the things that you do see, because not everything's true. Make sure you get second and third sources for information so that you can verify, and how to formulate opinions, and how to communicate in more than 140 characters at a time, right? I think those are the things that are the dangers that destroy the unsuspecting, right? Because the internet and those social media platforms are designed to get an emotional rise out of them so that you can sell advertising, right? I mean, that's what those platforms are built for. They're built to make money. And we are the product, right? We are the product, and they're very good. And this is why you don't see a lot of positive fluff pieces on social media. It always devolves to anger, hatred, and all sorts of other things, because that's what sells advertising, right? It's like, I'm mad as hell and I'm going to buy those shoes.
Yes, if it bleeds, it leads, as they say, right?
Yeah, if it bleeds, it leads. And I mean, it used to be kitten videos were the top thing, but it's like, those days are long gone, my brother. So it's like, no, let me show you violence. Let me show you unrest. Let me show you some conspiracy theories, because that's going to get your blood boiling. So you have to realize that those platforms exist to make money, and they make money by selling your eyeballs to people that want to buy them. So you have to be educated to that fact and how to counter that programming, right? Or else, like you say, you're just kind of unleashing Pandora's box on an unwitting population that's never been perhaps manipulated to that extent, right? And the danger of technology, and why is it different? It's like, yeah, but look, people are free to put billboards up and advertise on the radio and all these other sorts of things. The difference with these platforms, again, social media and other things, is that it reaches a mass of people way faster and much more deeply and much more intimately than a billboard or an advertising in the newspaper or any of those other medias that we've had in the past. It's like everyone has a phone. Everyone, when they're sitting at the cafe, doing their work, whatever, they're either listening to headphones or watching some YouTube video. You can touch 1 million people in a second. You can't do that with a billboard, right? People have to drive by it. So it's a lot faster, so you can get societal scale reactions to things, whereas in the past you couldn't do that. It was a lot slower, right? People had time to think about it and converse with each other and form a thought. Now it's like, nope, here's what you think, and this is what 1 million other people think at the same time. Let's go. Right?
Yeah, yes. And so, and you've explained, perfectly, why, I guess, to be cautious, especially of populations that might be, very new to our latest level of technology. We might be I'm talking in like remote areas that they're just, just first getting like online to, Google, and they're just getting used to, here's an Excel spreadsheet, right? and things like that. So I understand the cautionary, thinking and process that needs to go into effect. But because of the wide divide of, who has access, how do we stop these disparities from growing, right? And especially now that we have this, technology of AI, which is, I think, only going to get used more and more and more, right? And, and they're getting even into these, robots. I don't know why we want to go the Terminator route, but it seems this is because we want to live the movie, I guess. I don't know, but how then, because it seems that if we continue, there's going to be a mass disparity between people. So how can we slow the effect? Because I know this is something that you personally are working on with young people, right? Yeah. So how can we start, I guess, tackling this at the speed, like technologies like Zoom, right? But people are not necessarily. Yeah, right. People are not. So
people are not Zoom. People are the horse and buggy, and the technology is the Ferrari, right?
Right. It's scary.
It's zooming along, it's zooming right along, and we're like, giddy up.
Right. And so how do we stop it before? Because I only see, I don't want to live in Terminator.
Yeah, I mean. You have to, there's so many layers to this thing, right? I mean, you have to take it bit by bit and say, well, okay, first of all, this is perhaps the first time in history where we have to think in terms of humanity, right? Because what's at threat here is humanity. I mean, it's not that hard to imagine all the people on the planet just disappearing because we roboticize ourselves out of existence, right?
Yes.
So you have to think, okay, we need to think about humanity, and this is a challenge because the dominant system that operates on the planet right now is capitalism, which has at its center not humanity but a profit motive, right? And capitalism, if you take it as an independent beast, is hell-bent on creating wealth. And if it's wealth for one individual, then so be it. But capitalism is all about concentration of wealth into the hands of the few, right? That's what capitalism is. And that's the dominant thing on the planet. And that's the thing that's creating all this, things like humanoid robots, right? It's like, what we don't really need robots to manufacture our cars. But the people who have the money are like, well, I'd make more money if I did. Right? So that's one thing. You have to say, well, okay, but that's not fair. And I'll just give you a brief example of where the counter happens. So I lived in India for a while. And if you go out in the morning on the streets in the city I lived in, Hyderabad, you would see all these women sweeping the street with hand brooms, right? And you just, as an American, you look at that and go, man, you could just drive one of those street sweeper trucks down the street and you'd be done in 10 minutes, right? They spend 2 hours hand sweeping the street, and they probably employ hundreds of people across, if not thousands of people across the city to do that. So my American view, my very capitalist-centric view of it is just buy one truck and you could replace all those people, right? But if you think from a humanitarian or humanist point of view, it's like, okay, you could do that, but now how are you going to employ all those people? Right. What are they going to do? And these are not people you can say, well, now they can go to college. Like, no, these are not the people that are suddenly going to go to college because they're not sweeping the street. they're limited in the skill set that they have. This is a good option to have them sweep the street and give them 100 rupees a day. It's a good option because they don't have the grand welfare state or anything like that. So you have to look at things like that where it's, okay, the street sweeper machine is what the capitalist will think of. The humanitarian will think, well, how do I maximize for keeping people employed and making sure that people have a good way of life, right? That's the core of the big challenge, is to change our mindset to that thinking. And I think it fortunately for, I'm African American, so there is a history there's a history for African communities to be more community centric. Now, of course, Africa has its billionaires and goods and bads, but the history is a more community based cultures and storytelling and all this other sort of stuff. So there's some hope there that says, well, it can work. I mean, there's societies that have been more focused on being humane rather than just being driven by pure profit. So there's something to learn from those societies. So there's that. The other part of it is you have to just get the raw tools into more people's hands as quickly as possible. And the tool of the day right now is all this AI technology in various forms.
Looking to reach people who believe what you believe? Advertise on the Project Good podcast. Contact us at projectgood.work/podcast. Advertise today. How do we put humanity in technology? Because as I'm envisioning, even I know, from traveling, even the brooms that they make don't look like the plastic ones we have here, right?
Yeah.
And so, but all these things are important in order for people to, I guess, for lack of better terms, to be able to eat. They need these jobs. They need these jobs to have the money to get, the bread that they need and, pay for school fees for their children.
Right.
And so how can we blend the two?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of social engineering that goes into this, right? Because not all places are created the same, meaning not everyone's in the same place, I should say. There are people who are subsistence farming, right? And they like doing that, or they don't like doing it, but that's what they're doing. You're not going to show up to them suddenly and say, what you need is self-driving cars and iPhones. It's like, okay, that's very imperialistic of you. So you have to meet people where they are and really talk about what they want and figure out ways to bring technology to them, because technology at this point isn't a single thing, right? It's not that everyone needs an iPhone. It's not that everyone even needs AI. Maybe what they need is some sensors on the farm to tell them, what the water levels are or something like that. So I think there's, and it's hard to have this conversation without feeling a bit paternalistic, right? It's like, well, who am I to tell them, right, what they need? I mean, that's why I say you need to go, anyone who feels they are a technologist and has something to offer to the world needs to go into communities and listen to them, right? That's the first step. Before you show up with an iWatch or an iPhone or an eye goggle, you need to go in and say, hey, what are your dreams and aspirations, and what would you like to achieve in the world? Maybe there's something I have that can help you. I think that's part of the first piece of the conversation that you have to have. Otherwise, you come in as an imperialistic capitalist. It's like, okay, you're not even listening to us. You're giving us, money for toilets, but we don't need that. We need something else. So I think that's the first step. And then when you do actually get to someone who says, hey, I need access to computers and the internet, it's like, oh, okay, let's have a conversation about that. What is the lowest cost ways that I can get you into it? And let's make sure we train you up on the ills of the internet and then empower you with the newest tools, not the tools from the 50s. At this point, I wouldn't go into some place and say, hey, let me show you how to use Word and Excel. I would go in and say, hey, let me show you how to use ChatGPT, right? Because this is the tool of the day. I'm not gonna go in with chisels and hammers. I'm gonna go in with, power drills and CNC routers. So that's how I think we start to have the conversation, at least.
Yeah, so pairing people with the technology that will be useful to, I would say, their community or where they currently stand, instead of trying to push all the latest, greatest technologies without, I guess, consideration of their culture or where they're trying
to do.
Yeah, or what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it's also on the other side of that, it's also important to gather their data and put it into our models. If I can say them and us, the people who are driving and creating the technology, I think it's important that I go into Kenya, like I did, and say, my language models don't include Swahili, and Swahili is pretty important over here. So let me make sure I gather a bunch of Swahili text so that my model gains some of that cultural perspective, right? And doesn't just always give answers that are from a Western European perspective. So it's important to gather data, just raw data, videos, voice, text, all that stuff, and augment our models to have that stuff included, or else you are not including their culture, right? And that's critical.
Yes, you made me think about something that is also critical, is that because technology is developed in, I'll say, like these 4 key areas of Japan, Korea, China, and the U.S., then it's not necessarily done on purpose, because there is, some subconscious. But as these technologies are being developed, because of the, location of the people in these areas, they develop these biases that can be, unconscious because of what they experience and know. And instead of being able to expand, because we all, whether we want to believe it or not, we all have tunnel vision, because we've only experienced our lives as who we are, right? So we can't we can't understand 100%, another person's lived experience, because we didn't grow up there, or we weren't raised in that family, or we're not part of that culture. And so in that, then, because technology, people look at it as the equalizer, but now, it's maybe causing us to become, I'm going to use a little fun term, basic in a way, right? Right? Like we're losing any sense of individuality.
Yeah, you're becoming homogenized.
Right.
You're all the same. So, and the thing you're becoming homogenized to is whatever the person who created the technology decided it was, or happenstance just kind of lucked into it, or whatever. Like you look at all the large language models that are out there today, they're all trained on the same data sets, and they were collected from the internet. It's like, well, if my society is not highly represented on the internet, then we're not represented at all, right? So all the answers come from a different perspective than my own culture. So yeah, you're right. It's like, well, there you go. Bias is built in, whether you want it or not. You could be all the best meaning non-biased person on the planet, but if all you trained on was data that came from your culture, then your system is biased, right? That's all there is to it. It's not biased towards humanity. It's biased towards whatever the data came from.
Yes. And so how do you, I know you're working to bring in, like you personally are working to bring in other people from other countries. How do you, or I guess, I'm sure you encounter other people that want to do similar things that you're doing, but how can you, I guess, encourage, or how do you encourage other companies and people to start expanding, I guess I would call it their worldview on technology?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, with certain people, the only thing they understand, like executives at a place like Microsoft or Google or any of these other places, you had to speak in their language, which is total addressable market. And that's just who can they sell to, right? It's hard to go to those people. In some places, you'll be more successful than others, but it's hard to go to those people with the humanitarian argument. It's like, hey, man, you got to do this for the good of humanity. This is the right thing to do. It's like, yeah, but I got a shareholders meeting next week. And, while we're all over here kumbayaing, our competitors are just in there, selling out, and they don't give a rat's ass about what you're talking about. So you have to be, you have to go to them and say, look, I know a way for you to get more customers into your AI tools on the continent of Africa, which has, 1.2 billion people and growing. You do it by incorporating language models that include Swahili or, the myriad other languages that are out there. You do it by gathering this set of data over here. And I don't guarantee, but you'll capture more people because what they care about is community development and farming and, whatever. So you have to go to it like that, because otherwise they're just not going to care, right? It's like, yeah, I hear you. And they'll speak a good game. They'll say, yeah, humanity, we're all for it. And then they turn around and it's like, where are we going to maximize the dollar? Because that's what they're driven for, right? They got to maximize the dollar returns for their investors. That's their only reason to exist. So you had to go and talk their language, which is total addressable market. And that's why you're going to go and be diverse and get into these different cultures and include their data and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I don't know, and I could be, because I'm not an expert in this, and I'm not living in this. But for what I see, and of course, you can, who knows all the truths of what you're seeing on television and what you're reading and, being told. But I almost feel that it has to become now like a necessity because of the different things that are being affected, right? From the environment, the like how then in Dubai, how they were seeding rain, and it it's seeded
kind
too
of got
much.
out of hand.
Seeded too much. A desert is now an ocean or something, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Got a little bit carried away there.
Right. And so it's just like, and then obviously, something like that, right? That would be, an epic movie thing, starts affecting other countries. And, because believe it or not, everybody, we're on the same ball.
Yeah. Who knew that our pollution would blow over the border?
Right. And so, I think we're just for a survival that, no matter even if you want more money, that you're going to really have to start thinking about it, because there's a blowback effect, because it is a ball.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, kind of like thinking of, the U.S. and China right now are doing trade wars, if you will. And it's like, really? We sell to them and they sell to us. Neither one of us can go out of business, or we're both out of business, right? It's like, you do realize they make all our iPhones, right? So, it is funny. And again, it goes to the humanity thing where it's like, well, yes, we can be competitive, but we do have to realize that we are a humanity. There is only one planet for us right now. And if we don't get smarter about it, it's just not going to go great for everybody, right? and it probably won't go great for most of us. So yeah, we got to be a little bit more humanitarian about things, even if for a business perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, to keep your business going, because if you don't, and that's why I'm saying that it's almost becoming like it has to almost be a necessity or common sense now, because of all the shocking and horrific things that have happened that we see now almost monthly, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things also that I want to talk about, just because, of course, we all went through COVID on this crazy ball, is that, how technology has, I know this is a little bit out of your area, but you're still in tech, has touched healthcare and how it is, able to help communities. And, I'm talking more probably from your perspective, like just access to data and things like that. And so, and I'm bringing this in because I want to, talk about, the good side and of what technology can do if we give, access even to certain populations, right? And I pick healthcare because it's essential, right?
It's critical for everybody. So I can tell you a story about healthcare and technology from just before the pandemic. I was sitting in a review of someone who came from India, and they're talking about this screening program that they had where they go out to villages and they check people for cardiovascular, this, that, and the other thing, and they gather a bunch of data. And one of the interesting things they found was if you go to a doctor in the West, and they check your blood pressure and all these sorts of things and try to determine whether you're going to have a good life or not, or whether you need to be on amlodipine or whatever to reduce your blood pressure. All those models were built off of white males who are European. When you go to India and you run the same kind of tests, collect all this data, it turns out the Indian physique is different than those white men from Europe. And so your risk factors are different. So prescribing the same drugs to those people in India is kind of pointless. They need a different regime because, it's like, well, their blood pressure is on average higher or lower, or, the cholesterol levels are different. The profile is different. The risk factors are different because their diet is different and their body types are different. So it's just one of those things where now that you have all this ability to collect data from everywhere, you can come up with better models for what is, quote, healthy. What's the healthy profile for this set of people versus this other set of people? And again, with technology, you're now getting into a place where this is something that Google is actually spending a lot of time on, where you can tailor drug development to match a population or even to match an individual, if you want to go that far. So the technology is helping us analyze both the data from the people, fit it to a model that's appropriate to that population, and come up with drugs that are appropriate to that population so have maximum efficacy, right? And that's something we couldn't do before. You would just come up with one drug for all people for low or high blood pressure and hope it works. And it'll mostly work for white men from Europe, and it may work for other people, right? And forget about women. They didn't study women at all. It was all based on white men from Europe. So technology helps you there because we're at a point where we can gather a lot more data. We can analyze a lot more data, and we can make inferences or conclusions. We can ask a question: what would be the best drug to bring this blood pressure to within reasonable norms for this population? And it can say, oh, the drug should be tailored like this. Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, that's the technology in healthcare thing, or one part of technology in healthcare.
Yes, and so it just it answers our question about just giving people access. But I love what you said about access with I'm going to call it access with understanding, and understanding like what a population needs, how it's going to utilize that technology, and introducing it to them so that I guess it would be relatable, right? If I'm a farmer and, I need a technology because, unfortunately I lost all of my oxen. And now I need, something that's going to, turn up the land for me. I can get behind that as a farmer probably anywhere, right? And you can, show me the benefits, and I'm probably, willing and open to learn. Like, I'll sit down every day, right? Because I got to get this done because it's my livelihood.
I can even give you a story on I mean, it's not healthcare, but farming, since you said farming. This is a true thing we were doing in Kenya. We went out to a farming village and we created an app with them where they can use their cell phone to, and it was backed by some AI stuff. They can use their cell phone to figure out the problems that a plant is having. Like they go up to a plant, like it's corn or whatever, and maybe it has some mold on it. They take a picture of the mold, and then they send it into this app and they say, what's the problem here? And it'll ask a few questions like, oh, is this on the flower, on the stalk, or whatever? And it'll tell them what the thing is, what the fungus is, and how to treat it. Most importantly, it'll say, oh, you need to go and get this particular herbicide and apply it in this way for this amount of time, and blah blah blah. Or I'm sorry, you can't recover that. Cut the crop down and burn it. So this is useful to the end. It's spoken Swahili, so they could enter their conversation in Swahili. Very importantly. Not in English, because they spoke Swahili. And it's very useful to them because in the past, what they would do is if there's a problem, put ash around the stalk of the plant, and that's it. That's the only solution they had, right? So it's like, okay, well, that's going to work for certain things, but it's not going to work for 70% of the things. So this app that they carried on their phone allowed them to connect to the cloud, utilize AI. They don't know they're using AI. They're just having a conversation and sending a picture. And it would give them very targeted information about how to take care of their crop. And then they have better crop yields because of that, right? So again, that's technology in their hands, and they're not technologists, right? I didn't have to send those to AI school and anything like that. I just give them the app and say, here's how you use it, take pictures, have this conversation, and you'll get good answers, right? And that's a perfect example of how technology can be used on the ground, right? Without a lot of fanfare, essentially.
Yes. And so my final question for you is if you were going to, talk to all the current tech companies and maybe upcoming ones that have some interesting products, what would you tell them when, why should they focus on marginalized communities in this time?
I guess it splits into two things. If you are one of those marginalized, you better do it because it's in preservation of your own tribe. So that's one reason to do it. If you're not one of those, if you do not consider yourself one of those marginalized communities, think at a higher level. It's like, well, we're all part of humanity, so you are part of the community. But if that doesn't appeal to you, just think of the total addressable market. You can address more of the market if you will tailor your products to suit more people. And that is true diversity, right? You're going to sell more. And that's why you're in business, is to sell and get rich. So if you want to do that, you need to tailor your products to meet more of the market.
I love it. It solves two problems at once.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, William, for your time and insight. If you'd like to learn more about William Adams, go to project-good-a-adams.com. If you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice problem, or simply want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. It's that time again. The Changemaker Conference is happening September 12, 2024. Register now at changemakerconference.com. Subscribe to our mailing list at projectgood.work/subscribe to get our episodes and blog articles sent to you each month, plus get a 10% discount on any project you start on projectgood.work. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Project Good, where we're focused on what matters.